It's not that we have the magic solution, but I think it's around the sensibility that this is happening. How can we get closer every day with everything we do? How can we do better, right? That's a bit of my principal point of view on the market opportunity today. Is that let's drive universal recognition around what's happening out there, what this new mainstream looks like, and how we help brands connect.
This is the Snarketing Podcast, for marketers by marketers, talking to marketers with just a touch of snark. Now, here are your hosts, Valerie Vespa and Matt Wurst.
Welcome to this episode of the Snarketing Podcast, brought to you by a sponsor that we don't know yet. But if you listen closely throughout this episode, you might hear a live read from Al, our amazing announcer. Hello, Valerie. Nice to see you. Nice to chat with you. Welcome back to episode 9.
It's so great to be here. I'm really enjoying this whole process, Matt.
It's definitely a process. I would say, given the fact that we have steps that we are taking towards improving our output and our outcome, I think that's the definition of a process.
Agreed. I feel like we're getting better with each and every episode. So apologies to those in the earlier days and all of our sound issues and such. But I feel like it's really shaping up and Canadians are listening to us, and hopefully that continues to expand.
Well, we are on the verge, or depending on when you listen to this, have already blown past 3,000 total listens and streams. Once again, I have no basis for comparison, but that's 3,000 more listens than we would have gotten had you and I just been talking to each other in a Zoom call.
Fair point. I consider it success.
So let's jump in. We have a great guest waiting in the wings that I am excited to chat with. But one quick piece of news that I wanted to hash out with you, and I'm not sure if you've been following it closely or if you're even on TikTok, but TikTok last week just announced and introduced their e-commerce platform to the United States. I had an opportunity in working on a couple of brand and client projects to see it, experiment with it when it rolled out in Europe, but I have some mixed feelings. My first question would be, do you think we need another place to buy things? Is it really that hard to buy something at this point?
I think it's an endemic sort of, place for shopping. So it makes sense for them to be doing it, and I think it will be very successful.
Okay. The one thing that I think challenged their launch was they've already gotten some backlash because some of the initial products and brands with whom they were working were kind of pushing some low quality products. But I know just through my own personal and professional relationships that they are working hard to woo major brands. But I think until there's a real strategy to do it right, there may be a slower activation than they probably think.
The whole craze of, what is it called when TikTok has a thing that becomes viral, but it's like how to make a recipe or how, shoes that everyone starts buying. I think that natural organic thing that was happening in the TikTok space becomes less organic when there has a buy here, button or whatever sort of shoppable capacity to it, right?
But this is yet another place where I think brands may want to lean a little bit more into their agency partnerships because they will have some visibility into and how others are doing it and where some of those best practices are. And that's why agencies are still relevant. And that may be a great transition to introduce our guest today. Should we meet him?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
This month is Hispanic Heritage Month, and the timing could not be better. Luis Montero is the CEO of The Community and a leading authority in multicultural marketing. This agency has been selected as one of the 25 most influential agencies of the past 50 years by Campaign Magazine. They are an Ad Age A-list selection just about every year. They've won Cannes Lions, and they are instrumental in helping brands connect with diverse audiences. Luis is going to talk about why that's important right now, addressing different consumer groups, especially as the economy becomes more uncertain and more brands are leaning into DEI initiatives as well as just culturally relevant content. Luis is also the first agency guest we've had, so I think we should be extra nice to him.
I think so too. I mean, his job is not an easy one. Being a CEO of a majorly impressive agency like that, I'm sure he's a very busy guy, so I appreciate him taking the time out. So I'm excited.
And now for the main event. Someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
All right, thanks for joining us, Luis. It's great to connect with you here. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you guys.
Likewise, we're here in New York. The first wisps of fall are starting to settle in. There's a chill in the air. I know you are a little bit further south. You're in Atlanta, but
in Atlanta, it's starting. It's fall, so it's starting to get a little bit less aggressively humid, I'd say, which is always a good time of year.
And your incredible agency, which we'll talk about, the community, La Comunidad, based, I guess, in Miami,
well done.
right?
Well done. The pronunciation, yeah, based in Miami.
Miami is always hot, literally and creatively, and maybe that's a good place to start. As an agency that emerged from that culture, that flavor, it's been a hotbed for innovation and tech over the last few years, but it's really been a creative city for many years. Miami Ad School, I just read, is turning 3 decades old this year, but your agency maybe 2 decades old, and your career also can be measured in decades now. Not to make you feel old, but
that doesn't make me feel great.
No, well, look, welcome to the club. I'm in the same boat. But I think this is really interesting for me because you've got something that's pretty rare as a leader in the agency space, which is longevity, loyalty, and consistency. A long stint with Jack Morton, and now, I said earlier this year, celebrating 10 years with the community? 11. Wow. 11, yeah. Okay. So congratulations. How do you think that longevity, which is, again, a unique attribute, has contributed to your development, your growth, your success?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm the kind of, I think I fall in love with a mission, right? With a vision and a mission. And that's what takes me from place to place. And it's usually something, when I see it and when I feel it, I'm all in on it, and that's what happened at Jack Morton. It's what happened at the community. And, so loyalty for sure. I think I'm a loyal person by nature. But there's also just this, gravitational pull to something that you get passionate about, that excites you, that feels like it's the right sort of, culture to grow and to do really amazing things in. And I think that's pretty unique about the community, I would say, because it was almost like I wasn't, even when I joined the community, I wasn't necessarily looking to join the community in that moment. And I met the brothers, and they're just great guys, and they had so much potential, and they were doing such amazing work. And they're like, hey, we need a business partner to come in and help us take this to the next level. And it was like, you know what, sign me up. I'll carry that flag with you. And it's been such an amazing ride that, it's given back so much to me that I keep going in, and I keep going in, and that creates the longevity, at least from my standpoint. Has so much to do with what I get back from those moments, and from these places.
And from a growth perspective, over the last 10 years, what are some of the major sort of things that you're super proud of in terms of what the brothers wanted to do with the agency, and where you kind of come from starting there?
Yeah, for sure. What's unique about them is that these guys are super talented. I mean, when I joined them, 11 years ago now, I mean, they were the two of them were globally recognized creative minds that were kind of pigeonholed in this, U.S. Hispanic space and Latin American space, and their ideas and their thinking were so much bigger, and that's one of the things that I got so excited about is man, this agency should be developing ideas on a much bigger stage, still culturally rooted and driven, because I think that's such a unique advantage, but on a bigger stage with bigger brands. And so that trajectory has been that, just kind of taking steps more and more in that direction, from, opening offices, outside of Miami, expanding into New York, into San Francisco, into Mexico City. We had a European office for a while, expanding our capabilities through, the partnership with Sapient Nitro. When the guys sold the agency to Sapient years ago, that was to get that sort of depth and breadth of technology, right? Which was something we didn't have, and they had in spades. So that was another big win. Publicis is another, they
Sure.
have this expansive network and infrastructure and capability set that just bolsters us on a different level too. So these kind of big steps that we've taken over the years have allowed us to just do bigger, cooler, more exciting work for our clients, and that's really what I'm proud of, is the work we've done for clients over the years as a result of all of that. We get to bring
Awesome.
in great people. You mentioned earlier, Matt, when we were chatting separately, around our CSO, Lee Maicon, or Frank Cartagena, our CCO in New York. These guys are just great talents that we've been able to bring on board to help us grow and do really cool stuff. So yeah, lots to be proud of. I could go on and on, but I'll
Sure.
put it off there.
And we'll get into it. We'll get into it in a bit more detail. But like, one thing, you're talking about people, and you are a CEO. Leadership is something that, there's been obviously many books, many write-ups about what makes a great leader. So can you speak to like some of the successes you've had being a leader and being a CEO? And there's just so many challenges with people working from home, and all these changes happening in the world today. Like, so can you just speak to and elaborate on what you think makes a really strong leader?
Wow, I think that's a big one. I think from my perspective, at least, especially with the context that we're all living in, more so now than before, but I think it's a universal thought for me, is this kindness. There's this level of humanity, of kindness and empathy, especially empathy. When you were talking about this hybrid environment and the flexible nature of how we're all living our lives today, really getting human with people,
Totally.
is a huge part of it. And listen, certainly not perfect, and we don't do everything right, but I've certainly focused a lot of my energy there, and decisions we make on behalf of the agency, strategically where we're going, how we're tackling the context around us, really is rooted in that sense of like a culture that reflects empathy and that reflects kindness. Right. And what I've learned is that if you focus there, the returns everywhere else are quite high, right?
Yeah.
That and of course, bringing in the right talent, because if you create that culture, you attract people who are attracted to that culture. And it just sort of fuels the whole thing in a really positive way. And so you bring in talented people that are also just really good humans, and that's very rewarding for me. But I'd say kindness and empathy are probably the two big ones. And, if I had to pick one more, I'd say this sort of like, unity around a mission, right? Around a vision, like rallying people around something that's clear. And that always works,
So true.
especially if you believe it. If you don't believe it, doesn't work. But if you rally around something that you believe, everyone kind of.
So has that vision changed in the 10, 11 years? I don't know if you're the third brother at this point, if you've been there 11 years, but defining a vision early on, it shouldn't change significantly, but it evolves. It's not, every year, let's redefine our vision. But innovation and creativity is clearly in your DNA, as well as the collaboration and the kindness that you talked about. How do you foster innovation and stay adaptable in this, rapidly changing industry that does feel like it's changing every day?
Yeah. Listen, it's hard, right? It's hard. Culture is moving at such an incredible velocity all the time that it's like your hand is forced left and right to, like, if you don't innovate, you fall behind, right? So you have to constantly be, keeping up is like the bare minimum. It's like you got to try and be ahead of all this stuff, right? So we have to push ourselves in different ways. And you're right. I think our vision and our kind of essence as an agency has always been that, like, push for, I'd say culturally honest, and breakthrough creativity, right? And the honesty piece is key for us because that's always been true to our nature of just being really authentic. Like cut through the bullshit. What's right for this brand? What's credible and ownable for the brand that we're working with and for the client that we're partnering with, and bringing that to the rest of the world in a really compelling, creative way. And I'd say as the adopted brother at this point, when I came on board, a lot of our conversations around the mission of the agency, we didn't change anything. If anything, it was like, let's take this angle, this sensibility to more people, to bigger stages, because the world changed. I mean, it's still changing every day, right? But in that moment, it was like, why do we have these sort of segment-based approaches to a world that's constantly fluid and converging? And the ideas should be open. They should be bigger. And so pushing ourselves that way, it's still breakthrough creativity. It's still culturally honest. And it's still through this lens of, the community, which when the guys opened the agency, I was joking around with somebody the other day, because it's like, I think we're officially like 22 years old or something, we're around there.
Drinking age.
But we're now
voting age.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It was like, we're now officially an adult in advertising. Exactly. If that's actually a thing, if one can actually be an adult in advertising, we are one. But it's like through all those years, we've stayed true to it. And when they started the agency, it was, they could have said Moya, right? But they named it the community, and that has stayed true to us in la comunidad, as you pronounced perfectly earlier. That essence is still very much who we are, doing creative breakthrough work through this group of people that has a strong culture and connection to that mission.
So flipping it a little bit to client relationships, obviously that's crucial to the success of any agency. Could you share some strategies or tips for those in the audience, around like really effective, impactful client service and business development? Like, what does it take these days to really make sure you maintain a great collaboration with your client partners?
So a couple things, I guess, that come to mind for me there. One of them is, and I mentioned a second ago, authenticity. I think that's key. Just being super real with people. I think we're an industry that sells a lot, right? And it's understandable, that's part of how we grow. But how you sell and what's overshooting versus just being honest and real and giving a clear point of view on like, hey, here's the real challenge. You're not this, you're this. Own it and let's build from there. Versus don't try and convince us that you're this, because you're not. Like, we're talking to consumers, and so you get into that. So helping and being honest and real in those conversations is one of the things I think that really leads to what we've seen leads to strong client partnerships, because they appreciate it, and sometimes you hear them, they've been like, we'll get back we've been wanting somebody to say that, right? Because we kind of feel it. But we have all these structures and processes and briefs and legacy things, right, that push us in this direction. And the CMO likes the color red, so we have to, it's like all those things. We're like so, I think it's sometimes having that outsider come in and challenge a little bit is what they're looking for. And I think also just, the same thing we're talking about with our talent is just humanity, like getting to know people outside of the brief, outside of the work, outside of what is it that, this is going to help them with in their own careers and their own development and what they're looking to get out of stuff. Right. And building a relationship that way is so it's led. I mean, listen, I'm sure I'm not the only, agency CEO that says this. I'm sure we all do, but you build friendships with your clients. Right. And I'm still friends with lots of clients from years ago, it is because I genuinely like them. And we genuinely like each other, and you've learned so much about one another that your kids, birthdays, and so that's still, this is a relationship business. It always has been, it always will be, and that's key.
So true. So true.
I
love it.
You are, I think, Valerie, correct me if I'm wrong, but Luis, I think you are our first agency side guest here on the Snarketing podcast, which is personally exciting given
Honored.
my background. So welcome. And the perspective, I think, is important. We want to equally snarkify all sides of this. And one of the big things that I learned, and it was a lesson that came somewhat midway through, even later in my personal agency development, was this idea of like awards. And we're not just creating content to convert and sell and tell stories, but awards also matter to both clients as well as agencies and creatives and motivation. And I still probably underestimate the personal pride and importance of that. You guys won some awards at Cannes. Congratulations. Are there memorable projects, whether they were award winning or maybe not award winning, in your career or that you've done over the last few years that stand out, that you're proud of, but maybe more importantly, that you've learned from and want to continue to build off of?
Yes, and yes to all of that.
By the way, I'm surprised there aren't lions in the background here. We can see you. For the listener, there are not lions. And sometimes that happens. You're talking to someone and you see all the awards in the background. So thank you for not overwhelming us with your bling.
No, listen, we have, of course, we as an agency are fortunate to win some cool awards over the years. And we did get, we got a couple lions for our Super Bowl spot, which we were super proud of this year with Netflix and GM. And working with Will Ferrell is always kind of amazing. I love that guy. But I think it's, I'm not sure from a creativity standpoint. We strive to develop sort of award-worthy work always, which is different than winning an award. It's like, let's develop work that like we would feel proud submitting to these. There's so much stuff that we don't submit, that we're like, and our teams are like, what are you talking about? I put in all this time and it's, we really like the work. And we, our founders and CCO Joaquin has a really high, level of criteria for what we actually will submit, but we still push for it. And it's like, how do we create work that everyone here would be like, yeah, like we're pumped to submit this to these awards. And we see it as award worthy, right? In our own filter. Right. But it's awards, right? I think it's a big driver for our industry. It attracts talent, it attracts clients, every single time you win an award, clients want to be a part. I mean, that's a press moment. We all love it, right? In that way.
And sometimes knowing that, right? Like having an honest conversation with a client at the outset of a campaign or even the beginning of a relationship, like what motivates them? Are you someone who sees that as validation? I mean, I'm happy just to be award eligible sometimes, but I think, need to ask those questions at the outset, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that is something that a lot of clients would say. If you ask them what motivates you, what do you want to accomplish? I want to win a Grand Prix with this work. You mentioned work that has, kind of impacted me along the way or that I felt really proud of. I think one of the campaigns I would talk about a little bit is our Oreo work, which is all kind of under that Stay Playful umbrella. But the work we did with Oreo Vault in the pandemic was such for me, like a moment that, I will always remember, because the tension in that moment on so many levels culturally, right, was so like thick. We're in the middle of the election. It was in the middle of the pandemic. There were so many things going on. And we had a brand like Oreo that was like, let's lighten it up. Like, let's be playful about this somehow, like bring us ideas, and this was our team came with the idea of, this tweet that was out there. And it was like, there's an asteroid that has a 0.000021, chance of hitting Earth on the day of the election. How crazy is that? And so we just kind of, latched onto that and said, what are we going to do? The tweet said, who's going to save the Oreos, right? It's like, what are we going to do to save the Oreos? Well, let's create like the seed vault in Norway. Let's create an Oreo vault and
put all the flavors in there. Right? I literally was just telling my son about this campaign yesterday in Target when the Halloween Oreos were out. I'm like, hopefully there's a few of those in the Oreo vault.
That's so funny. It's still there. Like we built that thing. We flew a producer out there in the middle of all the craziness. Thankfully he took it and went and made this happen. But it was such a fun one, and it was such a great like moment for so many people in that context that we were all living, to be able to just, breathe for a second and have fun. And that's one that I learned a lot from, because it's not just, what do you keep in mind what's happening in culture, right? How do you show up authentically? And not every brand can pull that off, right? It's got to be right for the brand, but showing up authentically in the way that they did, and reacting to the world around us in a clever way. That's something that we don't want to forget, because you can get lost in briefs and you got to check this box and this RTB and this, when it's like, there's a whole world out there, right? And all these things are happening. How do we become relevant and interesting and current in that context?
It's funny, because my next question to you is sort of like, how do you balance, in this data-driven world, how do you balance creative and analytical aspects to impactful campaigns? And I think that's like the perfect example. So
asked and answered. Yeah, good.
So I'll go on to another one.
Then. Asked and answered. That's perfect.
Going through it. Here we go. All right. What's next, Valerie? What's top of mind for you?
All right. Hispanic Heritage Month is going on right now, so that is top of mind. In your career, you've worked in both general and U.S. and Hispanic markets. So can you discuss the sort of unique challenges that creates, and opportunities, obviously, probably more so that than you've encountered and navigated through in your tenure? And it doesn't have to be these most recent years; it could be sort of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I think probably the main thing for me is it's almost the challenges and opportunities and living in both worlds. It's like, it's frustrating that you have to, it's kind of where I would start. I think when you're doing, I can't tell you how many times over the years we gotten a call of, it's July and, we got to do something for Hispanic Heritage Month, and I love it. I love the fact that brands want to lean into that moment. But I always say the same thing, which is, this is, like, build something ongoing. Like, let's build a platform for the community that lives and breathes throughout the year. So that would add so much more credibility for when you show up in that moment. And some brands do it and have done it, and some haven't. But I'm often find myself in the middle there, where it's like, yes, we can do this, but the market should be doing this more holistically. And that's a point that's important to us. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, like, shouldn't this be an organizational focus, both brand side and agency side, to create just more inclusivity? These are words, buzzwords, catchwords, phrases that we hear. But if individuals can comfortably express their preferred labels, their backgrounds, their identities, like, we should be encouraging this. So how do you, as a leader, encourage your company or companies in general to better understand and embrace different facets of, even being Latino? There are different ways to market and connect within the workforce, right?
Totally. That's my jam. I love that. Having the conversation, and we as an agency talk a lot about the new mainstream and this notion of, like, we've all seen all these charts of, like, by 2044, the U.S., by 2050, the U.S. is going to be minority white. 30 and under is already minority white, right? 1 in 2 babies born today is already multicultural in this country, right? The fastest growing group is multiracial. When you talk about how you self-identify, 1 or 2, 3 races that people actually identify with. So understanding that complexity is our job, right? As marketers, as agencies. It's not let's do that also. It's like, this is here. And that's like, if you're not doing that, you're losing share as a brand, right? Because that's a business conversation. Like, I'm in a lot of these, it's like, and there's a lot of really positive things that have come out of, sort of a social reawakening of the last few years, and DE&I and all the efforts that a lot of companies are making, which is great. But they often still get looked at as HR initiatives and nice things to do. The reality is that it's a business decision. The world changed around you, and it's like, you have to learn to adapt and understand that audience and connect with them in a more relevant way. And it's not easy, by the way. So to your point about what do we do, we're always, like, looking at ways. I'm half Cuban, half Spanish, first generation American, bounced around between a little town outside of Atlanta called Doraville, Georgia, where I am now, to, Spain, where my father's from, where I lived, quite a bit when I was younger. And so thinking through how I self-identify, yeah, I'm Latino, but I'm also other things, right? And so we have in Lee and the team, from a strategy standpoint, we have a cultural intelligence crew there at the agency, and we focus on this shift of kind of singular hyphen audiences. So Hispanic hyphen American, African hyphen American, to kind of a multi-hyphenate identity, right? You move in and out of these cultures and subcultures that you identify with all the time, but it's self-identity. You see yourself a certain way. I have to see you how you see yourself, not as all of our traditional marketing, guardrails have led us to believe you are,
Well, good news is the technology solutions for targeting are getting better, but I still don't know that we've solved for the how do we reach people who self-identify in a way that they may not portray digitally or socially, but maybe AI can help with that at some point. I don't know.
Probably. It's not easy though. I will say that. I mean, it's, I say all this stuff, it's not that we have the magic solution. But I think it's around the sensibility that this is happening. How can we get closer every day with everything we do? How can we do better? Right. And that's a bit of my principal point of view on the market opportunity today, is that let's drive universal recognition around what's happening out there, what this new mainstream looks like, and how we help brands connect, right? Not sure if that answered your question, by the way. I tend to do that, so let me know.
I don't know if you answered my question, because you obviously know your audience, and I don't even remember my question, so it's perfect. Answer whatever you want.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You're leading the witness now, if we're going to continue to use legal terms.
I'll answer the wrong questions. You guys ask answers.
Yeah.
This is great.
There's no good answers, just good editing, by the way, with our award-eligible podcast here.
I like it. Award-worthy. It already feels award-worthy to me.
We're eligible for awards. We're not going to win any, but we're eligible.
Please pardon this brief pause as I read some words from our sponsor. The Snarketing Podcast is brought to you, in part, by Secret Deodorants and Antiperspirants for Women. Secret aluminum-free deodorant provides up to 48 hours of odor protection that is free of metals, parabens, dyes, alcohol, and talc. Let's just say, that's no secret.
So marketing trends are constantly evolving. Are there any trends that you're kind of keen on right now? Are there trends from the past that you were surprised to see kind of go away, or things that are still alive and kicking that you're like, why is this happening? Any or all of the above, if you wanted to touch on, that would be great.
Oh man, I mean, it's funny. in our business, there's so many trends, and so there's so many fleeting trends, right? Where it's like,
for sure,
all of a sudden we all, I have a friend who's in the film business in LA. He's a screenwriter who's now, quite
waiter. He's now a waiter, right? In short term,
yeah,
during the strike.
I know he's trying, not easy. No. But he was telling me, he's like, well, it's like the studios. They asked me to write a pirate film because they think somebody else is writing a pirate film, and pirate films are going to be hot in the fall, so everybody writes pirate films. Then they shelve them all because no one actually does them. So it's this funny dynamic, and I feel like our industry is very similar, where it's like, we all have to have like a Web3 team. Right? It's like Web3, like everybody jump on the Web3. And so everyone's building, getting Web3. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what happened to Web3? Innovation, creative technology is still very important. And I think it'll probably cycle back, and we're starting to see. But I think we have those bumps as an industry where we all sort of go and grab all those folks, and everyone tries to create those things internally. And I think that's happened a lot over the years, right? As agencies, your core is still your core, but I mean, think about digital and social. We were talking about, agencies that are deeply rooted in that, right? I mean, it's like, that was a huge moment, Hispanic is that was another one where it's like, everyone needs a Hispanic, and now I think that the trend that's most interesting to me is what we were just talking about, which is sort of this culturally driven approach to the overall market, understanding that dynamic, I think is a trend that has been sort of under the surface for years. Called many different things, total market, and even multicultural carries such a stigma.
Well, marketing sometimes just needs better marketing.
Yes. Yes.
Are
That's a
there
good,
any
good way to put it.
trends or that you chased and regret, or like can you spill the beans on some marketing mishaps or lessons learned along the way from your illustrious career that you want to talk about? I promise not to tell anyone if you share it with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Promise not, except everyone that might be listening. We'll just kind of, so, so I guess, in terms of me personally, I would say, growing up the way that I did, sort of foot in both worlds, and trying to be, having parents that were very Hispanic and trying to be very American to connect with my friends. And as a kid, that was a dynamic that shaped me because I was always, my name is Luis. And I remember I think it was like fourth grade or fifth grade when, you introduce yourself, I was new and they're like, in the South, everyone said Luis. So it was like Luis Montero. And it's, it was not the best look for me as a kid. And so they're like, who's the new kid? I'm like, my name is Louis. And so I was, for a period of time in my life, I was Louis, until I like came to my own confidence around my identity and became Luis again, and it was like,
Nice.
That's been me for many, many years since I was like 16 or 17. But there was a period of time there where it's like, so I think my learning has been a little bit of that, because then when I got in the professional world, it was kind of similar. It's like, well, they want me to be more this, or they want me to be more that. And it's like, I got to shift somehow to make all this work. And it's kind of like, the lesson learned is be yourself. And when you are, it always works. It's like you bring that true sense of self and everything you are to the table, and people are like, yeah, like that. I want, like, don't try and do that. Be that. And I tell our younger kind of communitarians this, and interns, and as they join us and things like that, it's like, you're here because we want your unique point of view and everything that comes with that. Bring that to the table, because that's what you can get. I can hire a copywriter from a lot of different places, but if it's you, it's because you bring something different and special and unique, like that, whatever that looks like from an identity standpoint, like bring it forward,
And generally, I feel like the younger generation is kind of leading with that, which is so wonderful to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I love that too, because it's something I don't see. I'm sure there's some of this, what I struggled with earlier in my career. I'm sure it still exists, but not as much. I mean,
Sure.
the level of, I think, imposter syndrome in,
Ugh.
at least in my generation and with me, of like, I don't belong in this room. Like, I'm this like Hispanic guy that they don't, it's like, so it's always kind of a weird thing. And I think for a lot of these kids, they're just showing up with, a lot more confidence around it.
I always talk about my like bad suits, cheap suits that I used to wear, and I just felt like I was wearing a costume. Like it's just like, like
Sure.
this is me trying to be professional.
I know that.
Is there and this is always a challenging question for creatives and marketers, but is there a campaign, an idea, a brand, a partner with whom that you would love to work, or an environment that you would love to create that doesn't yet exist, that would foster that type of celebration of diversity and creativity?
Think about that. I think more and more we're seeing that world come to the center, right? Pretty naturally. So I think if you were to ask me that question 10 years ago, I would say, yeah, there's a lot that we need to do to create more. This is the other thing I'll tell people is that it's like, if it's a cracked door is an open door, like get in, and I think that when you have this kind of conversation around more culturally reflective work and everything we've been talking about, it's like 10 years ago, people were still kind of just peeking in the door, and staying outside, like, let's do our thing over here. Now it's like the door's wide open, and it's about how you own that moment, that room, that conversation to help shift it, and so I think it's not really specific to an industry or a category or a brand, or it's just a mindset, I'd say, that adopting that feeling and that energy and going in and saying, let's have this. I know we were going to have this conversation. Let's have this conversation, because you're already in the room, right? And you're already there to have it. So I think having that, bringing that energy to the table. I mean, if I think about areas that I would want us and me to be more involved with, is probably more of the the for good kind of space. You know, when I think about the level of inclusion and diversity in that world, mix the opportunity that comes from that, it's like there's so much around these communities all over our country, right? Just staying here in the U.S. that you know, there's a lot that we can be doing. There's a lot more that we can be doing, and it's almost like it's a bummer that most of it's nonprofit. You know, like I would love that to be more of the core focus for brands is how do we build the brand in business and lift our community.
Well, do you see that evolving generationally? Because I do think there is a more socially conscious world in the future that is going to be led by Gen Z, Gen Alpha, whatever comes after that. My kids, Gen Beta, are they beta testers? I don't know. But is that coming? Do we need to lead them there, or are they going to lead us there?
I think they're going to lead us there. I think they're going to do that, and I love that push because I feel it. You know, I feel I have employees at the agency that have come to talk to me, and they're like, I'm working on this business, and it's a brand that we would all know and love and have been working with for years. And they're like, I was reading this stuff about them, and it's making me feel uncomfortable about working on this business. You know, and it isn't the usual suspects that we would all think of certain categories that have been on that list for a while. These are brands that, you know, otherwise you wouldn't suspect it on the surface, or, you know, maybe you would, but not to the same degree. And so we're getting that a lot, right? Not a lot, but the younger generation brings it up with some frequency of like, oh, like we're pursuing that. I don't know about that new business pitch. I'd rather be in that one because of, so I do think they're going to take us there. I think they are taking us there, and they're making us question things that maybe we weren't before. And I'm cool with it. You know, like I feel like it's,
I think like from like this generation, like questioning government and what it can actually do to make change, they're realizing that like they can't rely on that anymore, and that they have to be sort of the change makers, versus like maybe we were kind of resting on our laurels, perhaps like when we were growing up and kind of expecting government to sit there and be what it is. And I don't know, I just think there's something interesting around that too. Like they're going to be the real force of change.
Well, and there's going to be if it hasn't already come, an overwhelming amount of content created by new creators, new creatives, new brands, individuals. Some of it will be artificially augmented, but there's no substitute for the authenticity, the kindness, the generosity of the people that you are continuing to mentor, lead, and cultivate. So thank you. Before we let you go, Luis, though, this is where we shine. This is our lightning round series of questions. It was supposed to be 6 questions answered in 60 seconds. We have never come close. It's usually like 6 questions in 6 minutes, but we'll do our best to set you up for first-time success here. So
this is where the real smart comes in.
Yeah, so let's see. Let's dial it up a notch. So we call this Gone in 60 Seconds, but we will probably not be gone in 60 seconds. First question. Yeah. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early. I'm up super early. Always have been.
If you could travel back in time to any era to work on any style or marketing campaign, where and when would you set that date in the time machine?
Oh man, I got 2 dates that pop out to me. One of them is 1984 with Apple, because that's a big one. I'd say the other one is the 60s with Volkswagen. There was so much great work in that 1960s, that print work for Volkswagen, the lemon. I mean, that stuff was so iconic. I would love to be the Don Draper of the moment with that work and putting it up on an overhead projector or whatever.
And some of those things are timelessly potentially able to come back. The nostalgia is always current. What is the last show or movie you binge watched? I guess more show than movie.
Ooh, I would say, there's 2. I'd go Succession, which I love. That was so good. The first episode, I'm like, I'm not really that into it. And the next one, I just got progressively, it was like I fell off a cliff. I got so sucked in so quick. I'd say that. And wow. Yeah, Succession, actually. I think that's the one that we've been. My wife and I have been watched the entire Office season, like all seasons of The Office, like twice in our lives.
Again, right?
And
Yeah.
that's just
The best.
so
It's
easy.
so easy to do.
So easy.
So good.
It's just a wind down, pop it on. It's all funny. You know?
Is there any Michael Scott in you as a leader?
And I aspire there to be more Michael Scott in me as a leader.
As you pop in and out of, and I don't know how welcome you are to creative brainstorms at your agency. Sometimes leaders are welcome and sometimes they're not. What is your favorite snack, guilty pleasure snack during the creative brainstorming process?
Doritos.
Yum.
So I'm not a health. So my wife is a very healthy eater. So when I'm not at home we have like, flaxseed crackers and this kind of, like when I'm at the agency to brainstorm, when I'm out with clients, I indulge in Doritos.
Nacho flavor.
Yes.
No Cool Ranch.
I'd say nacho, but listen, I'm equal opportunity Doritos.
I don't know if you're a parent. I have kids. We have a healthy home, and I know for a fact when my kids go to their friends' houses, that's when they binge. So you are that kid.
Totally.
Everything in moderation, except maybe what is the one marketing tool or app on your phone or on your device that you can't live without, that you will not moderate?
Oh man, in this like virtual world, I'd have to go with Uber Eats. I mean, I'm always kind of like, I always need something, and it's so easy to get it delivered to your house when you're working from home, when you're working from anywhere, I'd go Uber Eats with my. Yeah, I don't know. You have so many of those apps. Did I make it in 60 seconds? No.
Yes. But you know what? It doesn't matter, Louis. You have delivered for us because you have been an incredible guest.
Correct.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insight, your knowledge. We loved learning more about you and look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you.
No, thank you guys. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. Honored to be here, guys. Thanks so much.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the Snarketing Podcast. Talk to you next time, and thanks for listening.